today I'm blessed to be joined by the one and only Thom Elliot. Thom is the co-founder of Pizza Pilgrims. He is the recipient of multiple awards and recognitions, including Sorted Food's Best Pizza in London, and has co-authored a book on pizza too.
So wait, you're going to Italy to pick up a van? This is the biggest media opportunity you've got. Like, you're two guys quitting your jobs to go and learn about pizza in Italy in a ridiculous vehicle. Like, it's like someone wrote it down. What was supposed to be a week drive back through Italy became a 4-week drive. Took a whole film crew with no plan for it to be anywhere. It was a real poof moment. If we can sell 50, that'd be great in the rest of the week. Put them up at 9 a.m. on Instagram, and by 9:01 they'd sold out. Those are the moments. It's when you see the team taking something that was a stupid idea that you had and kind of articulating it better than you ever have. That's the moment. It was the biggest rug pull you could possibly have as a business.
Welcome to another episode of Big Risk Energy. On this podcast, we talk to an amazing range of people. And we talk to these people about risk. Risks they've taken in their lives, risks they've taken in their careers, when they paid off and when they didn't.
Thom, thank you so much for jumping on this.
Thank you so much for having me. What a pleasure.
So Thom, as a total pizza fan and aficionado, I'm so excited to have this conversation because I get to speak to lots of entrepreneurs, and lots of entrepreneurs I speak to seem to approach building a brand or building a business in a very calculated way around, okay, I see a gap in the market here, if we position the brand this way and there's footfall in this area, and it's very methodical in the way they do things, and that's great. But I get the feeling when I read your backstory that this is a passion project and one born out of love of pizza. How right or wrong am I on that?
I think that's right. I think, to be fair, we tried to be methodical. And we did a lot of methodical type stuff. And then as soon as you hit the ground, you're like, all of that's gone. Everything we thought when we first opened the market stall in 2012, we were going to revolutionize the queue. We were like, British people, they love a queue. We're going to, it's been around for thousands of years. We're going to change it. We're going to have an ordering system whereby there are 3 pizzas on the menu. We'll have 3 queues. You've got a queue for the thing you want, and then we can immediately assess the demand of the 3 different menu items. We can just make them. We don't have to even take orders. We're just making based on the size of the various queues. And then you've got to hand in you get given a marble, which you've got to go round, and it's a different color. And we had this whole thing planned out, and we were like, this is it. This is our edge. We're going to kill this. I think we spent months planning it and 10 minutes executing it. And then we were like, this is a shit show. Let's just go back to a normal queue. So yeah, I think we've tried at times to be methodical, but quite often the stark reality of just doing stuff changes the plan.
And that's really interesting. And something you said to me just before we started filming as well is no ego. And I think scrapping the queuing system that you built over months and months in 10 minutes is a testament to that. How much do you think seeing other members of your family operating spaces before, running pubs, I believe as your parents did, how much do you think of that natural entrepreneurialism and that ability to see what's working and what isn't comes from that, how much does the removal of ego play into being able to see that execution is the key beyond ideas?
I don't know. I mean, no ego is the classic thing that someone with massive ego would say, but I think it's the number. Dying in a ditch over something is the opposite to me of being someone who's running his own business or her own business. You've got to adapt. You've got everything is changing all the time, faster and faster and faster. And if you're not changing it all the time in some small way, it doesn't have to be wholesale change. But yeah, I think you've got to be rolling with the punches. And I mean, I'd say this on literally everything, but John Timson, my all-time number one favorite inspiration. We had a day with him probably 1 year into Pizza Pilgrims for some spurious reason I won't go into now, but. Yeah, I mean, this is a guy who has built an empire out of a shoe fixing business. I mean, it costs more money to mend your shoes today than it does to replace them. Then he bought a photograph developing business. I mean, it's about adaptation and what's the latest thing? How can we twist this in our way? And I think, while sticking to what you're actually about at the core, But you've got to change it up, otherwise you're not going anywhere.
And how much did scalability of concept and delivery come into the early parts of the thinking when you were looking at this? Was this always something that you intended to be, multi-site, going to different places? When did that thinking change?
It was so little on our minds that much further at the front of mind was get it up and running so that I can leave it and prove that I did something to get out of advertising.
Nice.
Like, we were going to scale me down before we scaled it up.
Okay.
That was how much ambition there was. So actually, like, we started in March 2012 on the market stall in Berwick Street after the eponymous pilgrimage. And I was still working at the Week magazine. I was coming down to do my lunch break working on the market stall.
Amazing.
And then I think it was probably it started in March. I think it was probably May time when I was like, this probably needs a little more of my energy than 1 hour a day. And that I thought, I'll do the summer will be busy. And then by September, I'll then have this great little like anecdote to go and tell at job interviews basically. And then, by September it was like, oh, okay, this could be a thing. That's
amazing. And I'm glad you touched on advertising, because I think it is something which is interesting to a lot of people, because, obviously the story of Pizza Pilgrim is amazing, but it started actually spinning out of a corporate career. What was the thinking behind that? Was that a difficult transition to make? It sounds like it was something which you were desperate to happen.
I think so. I mean, like, no, I worked in advertising for 7 years, and it's an amazing industry in many, many ways, but you don't all get to make the blackcurrant tango advert like that. You don't all have those moments where you're like, I made that. Quite a lot of the time you've made stuff that you don't tell any of your mates you made. Or you post a national billboard campaign with a spelling mistake in it and take all the hit for it, which is what I did. But yeah, I did it for 6 years. It wasn't for me. I wasn't very good at it. It's a very much there's a sort of, my role was an account manager, which is basically, the kind of the quarterbacks are the creative guys, and you're like the big fat guys who stop the creative guys getting hit. And I wasn't very good at it. I couldn't. I quite often would side with the client on their particular point of view, and that's like complete no-no. Like, as if the client who's worked in a business for 25 years would know what that brand would be about. How dare they? So like, I struggled with it quite a lot, and I think, we, as you said, both me and my brother have come from a family that have always worked for themselves, run shops or antique businesses or pubs or like lots of sort of trading. And I think working in a proper job never felt like it was going to be the final resting place.
So how did you come to working in a proper job?
How did I come? So I went to uni, and as I was leaving uni, like all of my mates, and I mean all of them, were going into, I think they all literally went into law, finance, accountancy, management consultancy, advertising. I would say literally every single one of them, which is absolutely fine. I've got nothing against that. But so I was like, well, yeah, that's obviously what I've got to do too. And the one that I knew I didn't have to wear a suit in was advertising. And then out of this complete like luck, I was working behind the bar at the pub in Dorset one day, and someone came in, and he happened to be the president of one of the advertising agencies, and I basically just never let him leave until he said, yes, you can come and do a week work experience.
No way.
And so, and it went from there, and I went and did a week work experience at this big global agency called TBWA, and I worked on the McDonald's account, and it was genuinely still the most fascinating thing I ever did in advertising. That is a business. Whatever you think about McDonald's, it's an amazing business. I mean, 2006, this is a business in 2006. All the milk they used was organic. All the eggs they used were free range. All the meat they used was like GM free from Britain and Ireland. Like, everything was just so ahead of its time.
Wow.
But they, because they're McDonald's, they can't talk about it. If they put their head above the parapet and go, by the way, guys, we're doing this great thing, there was just like a rain of machine gun fire of how bad they were. Wow. So I joined the business at the time, 2006, when it was at a bad place, and they just put. Do you remember that movie Super Size Me?
I do.
That had been the free DVD, if you remember those kids, on the front of the Guardian the day before I joined.
Wow.
And so like McDonald's was really like the whipping boy, and as you look at it now, and it's it's obviously back to its. And like I say, there are issues with it, the scale of it, I'm not saying it's an amazing thing, but the things they can get right, the employment stuff, it's unbelievable.
Yes.
Like, it's, the percentage of people in the US, and I forget it because I'm a moron, but the percentage of people in the US whose first job is McDonald's, and their role in the economy of being like the gateway to work, it's huge stuff. And anyway, I think they put a lot of the right feet forward.
That's
but yeah, sorry.
No, sorry. I was just going to say that's incredible, and I think actually when a brand like McDonald's is doing these incredibly progressive things, which at the scale that they are, will have a massive impact on the environment, on the economy, whatever it is, and not being able to talk about it actually gives me so much more faith in corporates than I would have.
I think that's the thing, is that like you want to assume they're screwing you over, and I think probably that's built on the fact that in the 70s and 80s they really were. Like I think if you look back then, I bet there was some pretty dark stuff going on, and I suspect that that hung over to the current time. But yeah, I think sometimes you've got to give them the benefit of the doubt, and I think particularly with McDonald's, that they could be doing it a lot worse than they are.
Interesting. Okay, and
I can't believe we're talking about McDonald's. It doesn't feel like the big risk entrepreneur vibe that you were hoping for.
That's all right. We're getting to it. One thing which occurs to me, obviously with a background in advertising, how much it is that brand sells a story and the importance of a good story. And then I come to the pilgrimage, right? How much of that is by design? How much of that was fortuitous? How do you see that part? Because it's such a strong brand.
It's a really good question. I think it was born of necessity. It was genuinely cheaper to go and get the van in Italy. I think it saved us like a couple of £1,000s to collect it there, register in Italy, than it was to get it imported. That was where we started. But I think we quickly realized that once we got that kind of necessity out of the way, it was like, well, we definitely don't know anything about pizza. This is not a business that was born of like a 20-year love affair of pizza. It was, again, we talk about calculating. We'd fallen in love with street food because we'd seen it as an avenue to start a quality food brand with no money. It was the first time that, before that, you either had to open a restaurant, that was your only option, basically. And so when suddenly you could go and open a market stall and be considered alongside some of the greatest food options in London, whereas before it would be like, you're a market stall, you're obviously no good. That change was the bit that lit us up, and then we saw that movement happening and gaining energy, and we looked at it and no one was doing pizza, and so there was a love of that thing, but actually quite a calculated there's the gap.
Yes.
The reason the gap is there is because you need a 1-ton pizza oven to make pizza, and you need one griddle that you can carry under your arm on the tube to make burgers. So
yeah,
that's the distinction that we missed. So the barrier to entry, as I believe they would call it, is higher. But I genuinely believe, and this is going to sound, I was talking to Petra, who was the founder of Curb. I don't know if you've they had some stuff for their 10th birthday. We were talking, I genuinely believe in 30 years time they'll look back at 2011 12 in London food scene and equate it to kind of like 1966 music scene.
Yeah,
just the amount of unbelievable London food businesses that started in those 3 years. Everything from Dishoom, Honest Burger, Flatiron, Pizza Pilgrims, and obviously millions and millions of others. It was just a really special moment. It just sort of all clicked together, and the street food scene was the absolute central part of that.
100%. I remember it so well because I was at uni from 2010 to 2013, and I did internships during the summer in London. I literally had one across the street, a couple of roads away. It was on just off Whitecross Street, off Old Street, which is obviously,
a great market, yeah.
Absolutely. And I remember those summers, it was like, wow. And there was all these new places popping up, whether it was, the gallery in Shoreditch, whether it was the outside, the food, whether it was the original Night Tales, all of these new street food places just opening up left, right, and center, and it was amazing. And so many of my friends ended up building street food brands off the back of those summers. One of my best friends is don't know if you've come across Wingmans before.
I literally walked past Wingmans today, in Soho, and we used to trade next to them in BST festival.
Yeah.
Really great guys. Which is your friend?
So David's been my best friend since we were 11 years old.
Really?
Yeah. So
I'm so pleased to see them doing so well, because it took them a while, but they bloody deserve it. And now they're, I walked past Soho today, and I actually thought today as I walked down Old Compton Street, they're the busiest restaurant I've walked past.
Yeah.
So I was really happy.
Yeah, that's so nice to hear. And I told David that you're coming to the podcast. I was like, oh, you must know Thom, and he was like, yeah, I don't know if Thom remember me, but it's
been a while, but no, I do. They were really good guys.
Yeah,
really
that's awesome. And it was all based off those summers that we spent going to these new street food places, and I've seen what you're talking about in front of my eyes, and I think it's a really, really special time. And how do you think that has evolved? Because I feel even in the last 10 years, like people's understanding of like healthy food has gone up so much. Like people are so much more conscious about what they're eating. So how have you seen that impact what you guys are doing, if at all?
I mean, it's been a huge change. I think we were always, partly because we're just not cool, but our whole thing was like, we want to be approachable for everyone. We always talked about being classic, not cool. Like we just want to be like dependable, really good, fun, like, all the right things, human, all those things, but not like, and by definition, anything that's cool is of its moment. Like, it's very, very hard to be cool for a long time. There's like Clint Eastwood, and that's basically it. So like, I know he's probably been cancelled now, I'm sure.
I'm sure.
So, you know what I mean? It's hard to be cool. But I think that the thing that was big when we started out, the big trend that grew and grew and then kind of fell off a cliff, I think, was this kind of like meaty man food, like dirty, get your hands in, tear it all apart with your teeth thing. And there was a lot of that, and I think about that now, and if you put that in 2023, it would just completely 100% implode on itself. Whereas in 2015, that was the thing.
We had like Red's True and like all these
of those guys.
Red Dog, and it's so funny. I remember like you couldn't walk around a corner without running into pulled pork. Like it was such a big thing, and that's one of the things that I've noticed is it must be really tough for those businesses because I just think people are so much more environmentally and health conscious that it's you just don't see them blowing up in the same way.
But I think there's still businesses that have that same, there's still unhealthy food.
Yeah.
Don't get me wrong, but it was just that it's that dirty, that word dirty, that real feeling of like, we're gonna go get amongst it, and Dirty Burger was obviously the eponymous version of it, and I just don't think that thing is as relevant as it was. I think it's still relevant and it's still here, and there are plenty of great businesses doing it, but for a moment in time, it was the thing. And I don't know what the thing is right now. I mean, there was a sort of weird wave of sort of Peruvian food was big for a while. There was a couple of things that opened up, and they're still going. But I think there was a moment for that. What is the thing now? I mean, it probably is like clean living and, I mean, alternative meat.
Yeah. Alternative meat, 100%, and also a lot of low and no in terms of alcohol seems to be very in right now.
Low and no is so in.
Yeah,
it's amazing. The amount of people I speak to, particularly in hospitality, are like, I don't drink anymore.
Yeah.
It's amazing to me.
Which is, you wouldn't say that 10 years ago in hospitality, right?
No. I think we're all just getting old. I just speak to old people who don't drink anymore.
Yeah, it could be that. So talking about, big movements in the trends and state of consumer habits, obviously you guys were there front and center during lockdown with the at-home offering. How did you guys get through that lockdown period? And do you see any of the changes in consumer appetite or changes in behavior have carried through, or are we back to where we were before?
I mean, I think so. Yeah, I mean, obviously it was the biggest rug pull you could possibly have as a business that depends on people leaving their home. When people are not allowed to leave their home, that was on no one's business plan, for sure. It was pretty scary. I mean, the week, there was a horror week where Boris, bless him, was like, don't go to restaurants. I think on the Monday he said don't go to restaurants, but announced no support. Didn't close the restaurants, just said don't go to them. And then that obviously our sales fell off a cliff. We took the decision that we're going to stay open, we're going to trade, we're going to take every single pound that we can take to protect as many jobs as we can protect, and kept everyone on. And then on that I think it was on the Friday of that week, they announced the furlough scheme. And we were all sitting there, and you'd heard some rumors, and you're like, maybe it's going to cover 60% of people's salaries. And it was these are all the people that we work with and love and wanted to protect. And I remember like when they announced it was 80%, it was just like the relief, the feeling of relief was just like, oh my God. So we didn't let anyone go.
Wow, that's incredible.
We were so happy about that. That was a big moment. And so, all of our head office team, on the 1st of January 2022 was the same as the 1st of January 2020.
It's amazing.
And huge swathes. Obviously, a lot of people chose to go. A lot of people choose to go back home. We had this crazy early warning sign in our business because obviously we have a lot of Italians being a pizza business, and they were having it all 3 weeks before us.
Yeah.
So we were getting a lot of people going, when we were sort of going like, oh, this is just the flu, everyone get over themselves. We were getting a lot of people calling head office and being like,
Wow.
I don't want to come to work.
So
My mum has called me and told me not to come to work. Like, my mum thinks it's not safe. That kind of stuff was starting to happen, and we weren't there, and we were like this. But it was pervasive through the business.
So were you able to implement anything when you started getting early warning signs, or was it still a case of?
We took the decision to, as I say, to trade as hard as we could. We went out to the whole business, and we're just like, look, our plan is to. Obviously, this is really impacting us. Our plan is to try and take as many pounds as we can. Every pound that we take is someone's job that we've saved. That's the plan. If anyone is too scared to come to work, doesn't feel comfortable to come to work, is particularly vulnerable to this, anyone who doesn't want to come doesn't have to come. You can stay at home. Obviously, we're not going to be able to pay you to sit at home, but if that's the decision you want to make, we're 100% respectful of that. So we did that, and I think probably 20% of people did say they didn't want to come.
Really?
But I think quite quickly people started to realize that if you're 21, it's not as big an impact as it could be for an older person. But yeah, so obviously it was a very, very quick thing. I think by the mid-March or whatever it was, everyone was sat at home. Every store was closed. It felt super weird, and I think it probably only took 2 or 3 weeks for some of our more impatient managers to start calling and being like, I've been at home for 2 weeks. I want to get out.
Yeah.
What's the plan? And so me and James obviously my brother was very confused about having our, all of the ovens off. Did not feel right. So we sort of hatched a plan to open a site to do Deliveroo, because that was obviously, at that point, it was like, you're a key worker.
Yes.
We also filled some time. We did some drops for the NHS, some pizza drops for the NHS, that kind of stuff. We did little things like that, but I think we were all keen to try and start at least one fire burning, so to speak. So we opened that Deliveroo business in Victoria, and I think before we opened it, we were like, wouldn't it be cool to try and do something else to augment this? Because let's be honest, no one gets out of bed to work in hospitality for Deliveroo. I appreciate Deliveroo is big, but it's not the reason that you work in a restaurant. So to only do it didn't feel like the most exciting way. So then and that's where my brother was like, well, I've had this idea. Why don't I send it through you? And he sent me this box of pizza ingredients wrapped up in wool with ice packs. And I was like, it turned up in like an elephant town. It was just I've still got the picture of it just exploded in this box. But it was food safe temperature. It had gone through the post overnight. So yeah, we decided it would be fun to kind of incorporate that in, literally as like a way to put something on Instagram, say we're open again.
Yeah.
So we made 50 of the boxes, put them up on 9 a.m. on a Wednesday morning. We're like, let's sell 50. If we can sell 50, that'd be great. In the rest of the week, put them up at 9 a.m. on Instagram, and by 9:01 they'd sold out.
Wow.
And so then on
That's
the next,
mad.
it was a real moment.
Yeah.
It was because I'd built this hokey Shopify page.
Because I feel, and correct me if I'm wrong in this, but I feel like you guys were the first, if not one of the first, to be doing this in London.
I think Patty and Bun were ahead of us.
Okay,
I reckon they were a week or two ahead of us, but I don't think anyone else was.
Yeah. Because that was the first time I had Pizza Pilgrims.
Was it really?
Yeah, exactly.
And so many people did. Not only because it was just a new audience we were reaching, but also if you live in Bolton or Huddersfield, there is no Pizza Pilgrim.
Yeah.
So this was the first time that we could reach a national audience. So yeah, we did 50 on that Wednesday, 50 on the Thursday. Again, sold out even quicker. And I think at that point I was starting to understand Shopify, and you could see that 200 people had tried to put it into the basket in that minute. And so you were suddenly like, this is quite weird. And then we had talking of risk, we had a crossroads, a sliding doors moment on the Friday where we're like, well, we have two options here. We either play this smart and sensible, and we slowly build it up, and we slowly build the infrastructure to make this happen, and we kind of we do 50 today and then maybe 60 tomorrow, and build, or we just go, here are all the kits, if you want one, buy one. And so we literally took the decision to be we're going to put 1,200 kits for sale. We're not going to tell you when you're going to get it because you're locked in your house. We committed to getting it to you. I think this was probably 1st of April. We committed to getting you your kit by the 1st of May.
Okay.
But you didn't get a date because that was just the deal. So you buy it with that kit, and we sold 1,200 kits in 40 minutes. And that was the busiest trading hour in the history of Pilgrims. And then we were like, shit, we've got to go and build an infrastructure to do this.
Wow.
And it was then just like a comedy of like chest freezers and ice packs and just figuring it out.
And it's amazing because in my space on sort of VC and investment side of things, we saw off the back of that, we must have seen 20, 30 businesses raising hundreds of millions in venture capital just to try and make that their day-to-day business. So it's amazing to see how, foresighted you guys were and right time, right place and everything else. But
All of that stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. But, now I'm guessing, is that still part of it?
So it's an amazing thing. So obviously it was that, and we were kind of like, it really got us through sort of emotionally, I guess, through lockdown. By February 21, we were doing, because initially everyone was a bit like, what the hell are you selling me? We used to get emails being like, it's frying pan pizza kit, it was called. And we'd get an email being like, I ordered it, but where's my pan? I don't understand it. Like, I've got a pizza, but I wanted a pan. There's loads of people being like, I just do not understand what this is.
That's amazing.
By the end of the year, like a lot of other restaurant businesses had done this. And so the kind of concept was more embedded in like consumers' minds, I think. So by like February 21, we were doing 10,000 a week, which, was big. Like,
wow.
We had a proper factory going. We had like all of the people who would have been, were working in the restaurants were now working in, some of them begrudgingly, but there was at least a job there, working in this production facility. And then obviously the world came back. It went down and down and down and down and down and down and down. Obviously the last thing people were thinking about doing was making pizza kits at home.
Mm-hmm.
But actually, you know what, we partly because we love it, partly because it's part of our story, partly because, I like meeting someone in the pub in Huddersfield, let's say, why not? And saying, why don't you try one of these kits and get to send them? Our MD gives away more kits than, we can make, basically, as far as I can see. But yeah, last week we did about 500 kits.
Wow.
We have 300 and something people who subscribe. We made a proper profit last week.
Amazing.
And it's growing again. And I think, weirdly, from being, kind of like Forrest Gump, I guess, like, be the last trawler.
Yeah.
Being the last trawler left is a thing. And I think we basically are the last trawler left.
Wow.
Everyone stopped doing it. So, we really love it. And it's a nice it's a nice part of the history of the business. It's a nice expression of what we do. And frankly, like, customers really like it.
Yeah.
I have 2 young kids and I would love to go out on a Friday night and I don't. So actually making a pizza with them, if, I don't personally dream about making pizza.
I can imagine you've done a fair share
I've sort
of
of
that.
covered that one. But yeah, the idea of it, people really love it.
Amazing. And in terms of risk, were there ever occasions during lockdown where you could see, the economics of doing this straight to home where you don't have the same overheads you do previously? Was there ever a temptation to be like, okay, let's really invest in this infrastructure because this could be the future? And then how does that pan out with all the, are things going to go back to normal,
Yeah, absolutely. And I had, only yards from here, I had a very in-depth conversation with David, who runs Grind, who had taken a similar twist. And they've obviously got, they had moved to like at-home coffee more so than cafes. And I had this whole conversation with him and he was like betting the house on it. And I think we came to the conclusion that like at-home coffee was more established than at-home pizza.
Sure.
And so probably don't bet the house on it. But we definitely talked it. We definitely talked about betting the house on it. But I think ultimately, like, when it really comes down to it, the real joy we get, the real joy we get out of what we do is the pizzerias. Going in there, feeling the buzz of it, like the energy of the place, people having a nice time, hopefully. Like, that's the reason you do it. No one gets into restaurants to make money. And you could see it so evidently. It's so interesting, different people. Like, taking waiters who live for the buzz and the people and putting them into a sort of food production environment. They're all miserable because they're like, I don't want to be here. I want to be in a place where there's a load going on and there's people around me and it's exciting and energy and like, whereas the next person couldn't think of anything worse than being in that energy space and like all those people around and buzz. They just want to be told what to do, get on with it like that, in a quiet way. So I think me and James are both the former.
Nice. Okay, beautiful. So talk to me about co-authoring a book on pizza. What was that experience? Is that something that you envisioned early on, like we're going to make a book about this? How did that come around?
Well, we actually wrote a book before we sold a pizza.
Wow.
Yeah, it was kind of weird because we went and did this pilgrimage originally. So we set up the idea for the pilgrimage. And then I emailed my boss at work in the advertising agency. She was very senior. She was like the strategy director or something. I'd never met her, but I heard on the grapevine that she was leaving to start a bakery in Cambridge. I was leaving to start a pizza company. So I just emailed her and said, look, you've not met me. My name's Tom. I'm a lowly account person in your massive empire. But here you're going to start a bakery. I feel like we need to go for a beer because I'm going to go and start a pizza company. Went and had a beer with her in Camden where she lived. And it turned out her husband was a food critic, a BBC food critic. I had no idea about this. A guy called Tim Hayward, who is still the food critic for the FT, and he's on the food show quite a lot and that kind of thing. And he was the guy who was like, so wait, you're going to Italy to pick up a van? Like, this is like the biggest media opportunity you've got. Like, you're two guys quitting your jobs to go and learn about pizza in Italy in a ridiculous vehicle. Like, it's like someone wrote it down, like, go and pitch it. So we then went out and pitched it to all these TV companies. This was probably, so I quit my job in like June. We went on the Pilgrims in October. I reckon this was like August 11. We went and pitched to all these people like Pat Llewellyn, who's a legend, TV legend. She discovered Jamie Oliver. We pitched to her. She was like, I love it. It's great. We really want to do it. But, we've got to go down. We've got to go through the treatments. We've got to get a broadcaster on board. And we were like, we're doing it in October. So you either come in October or we're going. And so we pitched these three things, Fresh One, Optimum, and one other that I forget. And then a fourth one was called Rampage. It was a tiny little startup. They'd done a couple of little projects. And they were the only ones who were like, let's do it. Let's just freaking do it on risk.
Nice.
On risk. So there you go. Got risk in again. So yeah, we went and made this TV show. So what was supposed to be a week drive back through Italy became a 4-week drive. Took a whole film crew with no plan for it to be anywhere. And then literally got back and we had a feature, I'll never forget it, in the Hammersmith and Fulham Chronicle or something like that. And some agent woman emailed us and was like, just seen your little, I mean, it was literally the size of a cigarette packet, if you remember all the size of them. And have you got representation? And we were like, what do you mean? What is that? And yeah, we ended up writing a book called Pizza Pilgrims, The Backstreets of Italy, Recipes from the Backstreets of Italy with HarperCollins. And this was in 2000, and that came out in May 2012. And we'd written it basically by early 2012 before we started selling pizza.
Wow.
So but that was always, it never sat well because we had no idea what we were doing. We were led by all the other people around us. And the book was full of recipes like gnocchi and it was like, we don't know anything. We have no context or reason to talk about gnocchi. So that kind of always sat weirdly with us. And we just always felt like we'd missed a trick. And then we just kept talking to people about, we want to write a book about pizza. Yeah. Pizza is what we're about. And so, after banging that drum for about 8 years, finally someone listened and we got the chance to write this amazing love letter to pizza. And it's lovely. It's everything we want it to be. It's recipes. It's like city guides. It's, our favorite fictional moments in movies about pizza. It's just like this big kind of like geek-thon about pizza.
Yeah.
And it's exactly what we want it to be. And it sort of rights the wrong of the first book.
Yeah, that's amazing. I wasn't aware of the first book, and that must be such a good feeling to be able to go back full circle and say, yeah, this is what it was supposed to be. That must be a great day.
It was a good day. It felt like, tick, that one's gone. We can forget about it forever. We can purge it from our lives. Unfortunately, we haven't managed it with the TV show, which is, it's not great. Not many people watch it though, which is only saving grace.
Okay, fine. All right, Tom, I've got 5 questions to ask every guest that I'd have to ask.
Pow. Let's go.
Tom, what is the single biggest risk you've ever taken and what was the outcome?
The single biggest risk. Oh my God, it's such a big question. I mean, there's such a boring answer in that, like, it is Pizza Pilgrims, but like, this is going to sound really boring. It's a really crap answer. The way I feel about Pizza Pilgrims, everyone always says like, oh, how did you take such a big risk? And I'm like, we didn't take a risk. There was no risk there at all. We hated our jobs. I wasn't married. I didn't have a mortgage. I had no kids. I was 28. 0 risk involved. We literally went and did a thing and we did it on a credit card. And I think we probably spent like $8,000, like, not ruinous amounts of money. There was no risk involved. Like, the risk was not taking it. But today, right now, we're taking bigger risks than ever. Like, I genuinely think the biggest risk we're taking is like happening right now, where, we're looking at some sites that I probably can't say, but like, I guess the point I'm trying to say is like the risks grows for me for every day. Me and my brother still have everything riding on this business. Like if pizza suddenly turns out to, kill people, we've lost a lot. So like, I don't know. Everyone always talks to us, that we're these massive risk takers, and we're just not. Actually, our biggest risk is today. And so I think it's a crap answer and it's a non-answer, but in a sort of business kind of way, that the biggest risks we're taking now are the ones we're taking today. The decisions we're taking, which are changing like hundreds of people's involvement in the business, or a menu change or a new site that could be like a ruinous because it's just too big. We've never done something that's like silly. I think as you go, you get more and more calculated. Unfortunately, the spreadsheets get bigger and there's more people looking at the spreadsheets, and it's a really crap answer.
Do you know
hoping for something more interesting?
No, I actually don't think it's a crap answer for two fundamental reasons. One, I think you may underestimate how much some people would perceive leaving a very safe corporate career at the age of 28 is. I think especially now with the amount of pressure young people put on themselves, where it's like, oh God, I've got to have everything figured out by 23, let alone 28. So I think for a lot of people that is a massive risk. But I also think it's a great answer, because it's very easy once you have something that's working to stop taking risks and being like, well, we know what we're doing. If we just keep on doing our bread and butter, then they'll be fine. So the fact that you are actually as scared now, if not more scared, shows that you're really pushing the needle. And I think that's a great lesson to any entrepreneur that says, if you just want to stay still, that's fine. But if you want to grow and you want to do the empire and want to go as far as you can, you've got to continue taking that sort of risk.
I think you do. And I think, it's none of it's ruinous stuff. But like, in Brighton, we put a football pitch in the pizzeria. No one thought that was a good idea. And it's actually worked out great. But, there's a danger that it becomes novelty anyway. Yeah, I think it's an interesting one. But I am obsessed with this idea that, like, I've got young kids, and parents obsess about why are my kids different to other kids. They're like, this is what kids do. My kids should be doing the same thing. You obsess about conformity and like everyone being the same. And like if your kid is deviating from that, what is perceived as like normal in school, it's a problem, and it's a meeting with the teacher, and it's like, oh my God, my kid's not doing what other kids. He's not normal. She's not normal. Whatever. So you freak out about conformity until they hit 18, and then you pray that they're going to do something non-conformist. So I'm like, where does that flip happen? Because like you got to pick. You've either got to celebrate non-conformity from the get-go, or want people to conform the whole way. But there's this weird flip where it's suddenly like, well, the people we look up to are the people who don't conform.
Yeah.
But then we spend 18 years of our children's lives telling them that conformity is the answer.
Yeah. And I think it is fascinating, and I think it's only in the last few years that we start having appreciation of what the developmental journey of those maverick individuals was.
Yeah.
Because there's that assumption probably initially, oh, Richard Branson must have been a great student, or like whatever it was.
Yeah.
So I think it's only now that we're starting to see that. But it's interesting, as someone who doesn't have kids, that there is still that desire to see them maybe not fit in a box, but go down a more traditional route, which is interesting. But I think, with the appreciation of neurodiversity increasing on a month by month basis, I think these can only be good things. But I think, from the way that I see it, and so many of the entrepreneurs who I speak to with young kids, it's like we want to figure out what our kids love and just support them in that.
Absolutely.
Unlikely to be academic, right?
Absolutely. And like, I think that's right. I think you've got to do that. And it's interesting, like those sort of Richard Branson stories. They're all wearing they're all like, I didn't fit in at school. That's their badge of honor. Like the first chapter of the autobiography is always that.
Yeah.
And so I just think it's a really interesting. It is and will change for sure. But certainly it's something to think about.
Yeah, it is. And I don't want to go too deep on this, but I always do this on this podcast.
Yeah.
I always think about, you hear about these big, powerful individuals, CEOs of big companies, whatever it is. And it's so interesting to see how many of the decisions that they make, which have such a massive impact are driven by, oh, well, actually, they weren't accepted at school, and now they need to feel like this and all these things. And it's fascinating. And maybe is it the tail wagging the dog here of, well, I didn't fit in school, so now it's like, right, I got to make this back up and go that far, or is it I didn't fit in because I was always going to be that?
Yeah, I mean, it's a huge question, and I think The CEO thing is fascinating about like, how much of a sociopath you've got to be a CEO, basically.
Yeah.
To be like able to make those decisions and accept the consequences. And it's not normal. And that's why there are, literally hundreds of these people in the UK, not tens of thousands.
And as a CEO of a company, I can confirm.
Yeah, there you go. You see.
So are you? What's your role now, other than co-founder, obviously? But what's your title, if there is one?
It is just co-founder.
Fine.
We've never had a CEO.
Yeah.
We probably will do one day, but I've certainly never been it. And I never quite understand these people who like, they run a company with 3 people and call themselves a CEO. No offense, I'm sure that's right.
We have 70.
Perfect.
That's okay.
I didn't know how many you had. I suddenly thought, shit. But do you know what I mean? I'm just like, just get over yourself, like whatever.
Yeah.
It's not a CEO thing. But like, I never really understand titles. I do understand them, for other, in the context of the world. But I've never been that bothered by them. I'm founder now, and I guess that gives you I've always been founder, and I guess that it gives you that like slight okay to be just to say the stupid shit that no one else will say.
Absolutely.
But the biggest danger, the bit that I try and get away from, is like anyone thinking that you're right because you're the founder. That's the biggest problem.
Of course.
Because you say, I think, what about this? And sort of the worst version of it, you've created a business where everyone goes, oh, that's what we should do. And I want people to be like, that is a fucking stupid idea. Always going to be a stupid idea. Let's not do it.
Absolutely. It's the most dangerous thing, having blind spots because of yes men and women.
Yeah.
It's a killer.
It's definitely a thing we try and avoid. But yeah. No, I think my brother has a much more, he does food and restaurant design, and that's what he does. And I have a much looser job spec, which is sometimes you have a sort of existential crisis about that, and other times you feel like it's great.
Absolutely. I know that feeling. All right, Tom, my second question for you is there anything that you wish you had done differently?
Oh my goodness, so many things. I wish we'd done burritos. So much easier. So much easier to do.
The pilgrimage might have been more fun as well.
Yeah, and it could have been more fun. Mexico, happy days. I'm trying to think of the alliteration now, though. Can't make it work.
Burrito Brothers.
Burrito Brothers. I'm sure that must already exist.
Must be a thing.
That must be a thing. Burrito Brothers, we'll take that. There are so many examples of things that we want to do, we would have done differently. I think, there's sites you would have taken, or not taken specifically. There's little mistakes that we've made in terms of like trying to push the envelope on social media where you say something's not quite right, and then that has to be pulled back. And I think we've always stuck to our guns, though. I think when we've made mistakes, we've always definitely put our hand up and been like, we totally fucked that up. Let's change it. And I think that's the important thing. I think you've got to own those major mistakes. I'm trying to think of the biggest one we've ever made. I mean, there are just too many to work. We had some horrendous ones early on. Like it's very easy to get complacent about how important like food safety stuff is, but like in the early days, it's quite far down the list because you just like just getting the doors open. But we had an example where we changed a menu item and it changed the allergens and it caused an issue. And God, nothing makes you change. We are so hot on that stuff now.
Yeah.
Like, it's just unbelievable. But you look back and you're like, God, we were so lucky. Well, everyone was lucky involved in that incident. But the amount of things that the ball just bounced the right way. And I think you've got to remember that whenever you've built anything like from scratch, it's you've got to remember that you've been lucky.
Yeah.
There's no two ways about it. And you might have been in the right place, you might be more adept at grabbing the luck when it's there, because obviously everyone gets a certain amount of luck. But yeah, we've been lucky. And I've started a thing for founders of restaurants. So like it's a dining club essentially, but you have to be the founder. So, you have to have been there on day one of one restaurant going like, shit, what the fuck are we doing?
Nice.
And actually it's really nice. I mean, like the idea is like we get about 50 people each time and 3 of the founders cook for the others.
That's great.
It's called Lost and Founded. And it's just a really nice thing, but it does really celebrate that unique feeling of being there at day one and being like, I have no idea. And I think restaurants are particularly acute in that actually. There's there's a line where you're like, right, doors are open, customer comes in, first customer. It's it's a very like Fisher Price business type thing. Do you know what I mean?
It's
like
so tangible.
it's so tangible.
Yeah, it's all there. You can't do like a soft launch. We're going to A/B test different cohorts.
Yeah.
Like it's okay. The doors are open.
Yeah, the doors are open. It's happening. Let's go. And so I think that is a very unique situation to find yourself in. So it's interesting to reminisce about it with other people who've done it.
Yeah, very, very cool. And just a side question on that. So when you talk about building out a playbook, for example, things that were maybe lower down the priority list, which are now just standard into the way that you do things and all those standardized processes, how long before attempting to scale to a second, third, fourth location, how far along were the processes in that, and were you guys playing it a bit safer in terms of let's make sure we've got everything down before doing that? Because, you know, I've spoken to lots of restaurateurs who have got different views, and that would be great to get your thoughts.
Yeah, I think, I mean, I have heart palpitations at seeing how quickly some people scale and how relaxed they are about, you know, not knowing it all. And I think I was certainly in the early days, I was like, I need to know everything. And I think quite honestly, if we didn't have my brother, we'd probably I'd still be pontificating over that queue issue that we talked about back in the beginning. Like, I think, you know, you do need someone. We always talk about, like, you know, momentum versus like analysis. And I think, you know, my brother just hates the fact that I'm like, yeah, but let's get into this problem. Like, what's the issue? He's like, just fucking do it, and then we'll know if it's a problem or not. And I think we need that. I think either one of us on our own would have just imploded, because I would have just gone nowhere and just gone into a sort of weird like thought bubble.
Yeah.
And he would have probably gone off a cliff.
Yeah.
Leaving a sort of trail of destruction in his wake. No offense, James. And so yeah, between us, I think we strike the right balance. And I think I see that a lot with like successful businesses. Like, you need that balance.
Yeah. A yin and yang, as it were, or a half and half.
You do. You need a half and half, and you need that person who's pushing, being like, why not? Like, tell me why not. And I guess you also need the person being like, but why yes? And I think we did strike that balance well. And I look back and it feels head-spinningly fast. I think we're like 21 pizzerias now.
Wow.
Something like that. Should know the thing. And, you know, that feels like 10 years. That's really, really fast. But actually, there are plenty of businesses that have done it twice as fast. There are plenty of businesses that have gone to 20 and back down to 0 in that time. And, like, you know, I think the big moment, and, you know, this is a classic, but the big moment is when you can hire people who are better than you. And that takes at least a couple of years. Yeah. I mean, I know in the new VC world, it's like start with 100 million, hire all the best people, everything's fine. But we very much did it the old-fashioned way, which is like baby steps. And I think the moment you realize that like this person is better at that than you, it's such a glorious feeling about, you know, just like, okay, this person really gets it. And I think my favorite moments in Pizza Pilgrims always are the moments where you see something happen that you had no idea was happening, you had no involvement in, and you look at it and you're like, that is brilliant. Couldn't have done it better myself. Wouldn't have even got close to doing it that well myself. They're the moments where you're just like, I feel so proud.
It's incredible. It's incredible. And maybe actually answers my next question, which I ask everyone, which is, what are you proudest of?
Those are the moments. It's when you see the team like taking something that was a stupid idea that you had and like kind of articulating it better than you ever have. That's the moment. That's the moment where you're like, God, I just get in the way of this bloody business now.
Yeah. All right. Fantastic. My second to last question.
Okay, these questions are intense.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. Okay. What does it take to be successful?
Luck. No, it takes a lot of luck. I think it takes. I think the thing is that like people love icons, right? They love to take one person and be like, that person's super fucking successful. And so often it's just not that. It's never that simple. It's never that simple. Not so often. It's never that simple. Steve Jobs is not the reason that Apple is great. He is a reason, and he is like a great icon for making it a reason. And he's a story that people can buy into that's amazing, that they can go, oh my God, that guy, he was a god amongst men. It's not the reason Apple was successful. There's a whole load of other shit going on. And I think, you know, I would say the way to be successful, and obviously then you've got to unpack what is successful. Is successful having shitloads of money and being in a castle on your own like Howard Hughes, or is it having no money but a loving family and your health define successful? And I think, you know, that's where you get into this whole thing. I'm not going to get into the whole, you know, who wants what out of their life, but for some people, being CEO of a FTSE 100 company is successful. I wouldn't think of anything worse than being a FTSE 100 CEO. It would be my worst fucking nightmare. It would be failure with a capital F for me. And I think, but we love to think that the people who are those people are the successful people. But I bet if you saw the full picture, let's do a kind of, sort of Big Brother CEO. Jesus, fucking miserable.
God, can you imagine that?
Oh, it'd be horrendous.
You would have to shut that house down
But
day.
But I think I think the point is that like success is different for everyone. Yeah. It's for men, for women, for for kids, for grown-ups, for sports people who like money, people who like hanging out, whatever it is. Like, so this is a really long try answer, but I think the point is that successful people are people that work well with other people. I think, and I think successful people are broadly backed up by an amazing team, a lot of luck, an incredible set of circumstances that played in their favor, but they rarely did it alone.
Yeah, that's brilliant. I totally agree. And one of the reasons I love asking these fairly open-ended questions is people do go down the route of, well, actually we need to unpack, what success means. And it's always amazing to hear different people's views on it.
Somehow the market values, people who move money around more than nurses. But there's a very interesting version of the world coming in 100 years where AI can do a surgeon's job, a lawyer's job, a financier's job. Can they do bedside care? Probably not.
Yeah. I mean,
there's a glorious version of the world where like nurses are the best paid people in our society, and that alludes, that leans to a completely different skill set that maybe all the CEOs didn't have, and the whole thing flips on its head.
Yeah, I mean, I love the optimism of 100 years. I think
like 100 days.
Yeah, more like 100 days, exactly that. And I think I have controversial views around reality. Fundamentally, that it doesn't exist, but there is a very, very good chance that we are all just AI already. I think. So I think
that's a whole bigger thing.
That's a whole bigger thing.
But I do think, I re-watched Ready Player One the other day.
I've actually never seen it.
It's fucking great.
Yeah?
Yeah. Well, just because it's great because it's just an action-packed, brilliant movie with loads of geeky references from like 80s pop culture, which just makes me smile. But the concept that, people will want to live in an alternate reality that can exist, that can provide them with all of their social, emotional needs.
It's this.
Yeah.
No, it's this. This
it's happening already.
We're already there. It's just going to be more immersive.
Yeah.
But if you go on a tube, as I'm sure you do, and you're underground, and you come out and you watch every single hand go into every pocket and pull it out and wait for the signals to restart, we are all living in a desired, simulated reality already through our phones. And it's just a question of when does that immersion blur the idea of whether we're there totally already or not.
But why, if this isn't reality anyway, why would they bother creating a second reality within the non-reality?
So I don't think it's it's like a simulated reality that we live in, which someone has created purposefully. It's more just around technological capabilities. So, for example, have you played around with ChatGPT at all?
A lot.
Fine. So imagine a state-of-the-art immersive VR or augmented reality environment where state-of-the-art graphics, and if you see someone playing FIFA right now, you don't know if it's a real game of football, you don't know if it's a game of FIFA. Like it's that.
The lines are blurring.
The lines are blurring. Now, if you were in a social situation within a VR realm, you've got 10 avatars. 5 of them real people, 5 of them are just utilizing ChatGPT. You tell me if you know who is someone else in another VR mask and in the simulation with you, and what is ChatGPT. There is no way that you can possibly know that. And I just think if you're seeing the deep fakes that are coming through, I think there is a total crisis of consciousness around what is simulated and what is reality. And if we believe that that would be possible in 10, 20, 30 years, the likelihood of it having already occurred and therefore us being in a version of that. So I don't think it's like a malicious or like really controlled, someone's doing this to us, but it's more just if we think that that can be possible, then it probably has happened. And what's the likelihood that we're the first?
This is literally like a storyline from Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. I just love that thing in Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. We know there are an infinite number of worlds. We know that only a finite number of the worlds are inhabited. Any finite number divided by infinity is 0. So all of this is bullshit. I'm just
Interesting.
And I'm out.
Interesting. Okay. All right.
I love that.
My last question for you. 16-year-old Tom walks in the room right now. What are you going to tell him?
Get into Bruce Springsteen. You've missed 4 years not getting into him. You could go and see him on the first E Street Band tour if you went now. On the first reunion tour, I mean.
It's great advice.
It's great advice. I'm a big Springsteen fan. I'm going to see him 5 times in 4 countries this year.
Nice. I'm seeing him at BST this year.
Nice. I'll see you there.
Nice.
So definitely do that. What else? I mean, put money on Donald Trump to be president, obviously.
Safe bet.
I don't think I've got any like amazing blow your head off advice, unfortunately.
No, I love that. Bruce Springsteen, Donald Trump. You heard it here first.
Go now.
Tom,
Go now.
Thank you so much for coming on the show. Appreciate it.
No worries.